So diversity, equity, and inclusion are massive topics. They touch on so many relevant and important areas that are personal and sensitive to many, many people. They're also something that it seems kind of weird in a sense that we actually need to overtly state are actually important, but clearly we do. So before I start, I think it's also important to recognize the moral imperative of how diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just legal rights, but essential elements to the human condition. With that being said, I also want to make it clear that we're going to be looking at DEI from a workplace integration perspective today, and how important it is that organizations' culture is completely committed to following through on making DEI the backbone of the employee experience. Now, in order to do that, we're going to look at four main areas: what DEI is and what makes each element unique, what happens when we do not start in the right place, how DEI positively and negatively affects recruitment, and where you can start to make positive changes today. So let's start at the beginning. What is DEI? Well, it's a term used to describe programs and policies that encourage representation and participation of diverse groups of people. Sometimes it's called EDI, and sometimes it's just DNI. But largely, it's seen as the efforts that organizations make to improve representation and create more welcoming workplaces, which is extremely important. However, what DEI efforts are today and what they're actually supposed to be are often quite out of alignment. So DEI or EDI or DNI are often seen as a set process, mostly about hiring a diverse workforce that represents the values of your organization and the populations that are your customer base. Now, to do this, we need to be aware of our biases, ensure fairness like pay equity, and address accessibility. Now, a typical way that most organizations approach this is to first hire for diversity, then make equitable rules, which will in turn create inclusion. Now, sadly, this common approach is exactly why many DEI initiatives are actually falling short. The truth is that DEI is not a set process or a homogeneous effort. What it really is the sum of different parts that are not always properly understood, making them often improperly executed. So let's take a look at each of them separately to better understand their purpose. Now, diversity is about the invitation. It comes down to who is hired, who is promoted, and is essentially about who is invited to participate and who is represented. Now, equity is about the access. Does everyone have fair access to the resources, equitable pay, and equitable treatment? Ultimately, equity can be summed up by, does everyone have access to what they need to put them on level ground? Now, inclusion is about the opportunity. Is everyone provided the same opportunity to belong, to be successful, to feel safe, respected, and valued? These opportunities are reinforced every day by each decision that we make, and they need to become part of the culture of the workplace. Now, inclusion is a much bigger endeavor than both diversity and equity. So we have some other helpful ways to think about their differences to share with you. So the first is from American activist and author Verna Myers. She says that diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. According to Arthur Chang, a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist with Planned Parenthood, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. And according to Daisy Wright of the Right Career Solutions, diversity is about differences. Equity is about providing equal access, and inclusion is about fostering a sense of value and empowerment in employees. Okay, so we're not going to wait till the very end to answer the question, DEI, where to start. The short answer is, it depends on your goals. And the longer answer is that your goals are dictated by your priorities. So starting with diversity is important if you want to strengthen your business's reputation. Prioritizing working towards diversity is a very noble goal. But when it's your first step, it may be more about the optics rather than the impact. It is the most visible place to start and can make your business look good in photographs. But if the optics and visual proof of diversity are the priority, then any success creating change will be short-lived. So starting with diversity will work if building your company's reputation is your primary goal. Now, starting with equity is important if you want to strengthen your legal compliance. Prioritizing working towards equity as your first step can be a good place to start. It can allow you to make sure that the environment and the conditions of the workplace are fair and put everyone on the same level, providing fair access for everybody. And as important as this is to address things like job dissatisfaction and leveling the playing field, most of the work done around equity happens in policies on paper. And when it's done well, most people may not even feel the effects because equity is something that people expect. It's kind of a given, something that they should have anyway. So start with equity if you're not already meeting labor compliance and if you're dealing with massive job dissatisfaction. Now, starting with inclusion is important if you want to strengthen your organizational culture. Prioritizing working towards inclusion is actually your best place to start. For most of you, this is the answer that you're looking for. Inclusion should be your primary goal. Now, equity is required to achieve full inclusion, of course, absolutely. But committing to making all employees feel like they belong and are accepted really should be your priority. This is something employees will see and feel every day in their interactions, in their meetings, and how they do their jobs. And this is also why we feel that inclusion should not be thought of as separate from belonging. Many articles and courses talk about belonging as a separate part of DEI, creating DEI-B, but we firmly and intentionally state that belonging is an essential part of inclusion and not to be separated. Now, even though we're encouraging you to start with inclusion, never forget about diversity and equity. They are critical and require dedication of time and resources. But prioritizing working towards inclusion is the sustainable place to focus your efforts, especially at the beginning. Now, diversity is often seen as the typical place that many organizations tend to start. But diversity is about the who we recruit, who we promote, who we select, and who is in a position to represent. But inclusion is about the how we make people feel like they belong, how we create a safe place to speak up, how we encourage people to be successful. Diversity efforts mainly happen at the hiring process and are often measured by how many people fit into what categories, where inclusion efforts are about everything that happens after someone is hired. It's about how they will be treated with their team, how the workplace culture will make them feel, how they will be able to be successful and productive in their work. Now, workplaces that place a priority on inclusion have some major advantages. When inclusion is integrated into the workplace culture, it improves the performance and productivity of a team by 30%. Companies that prioritize and walk the walk with inclusion are more profitable and significantly more likely to be innovators, which really does make sense. When employees are able to be themselves, feel like they belong, and feel open to sharing different perspectives, they can reach different markets, inspire more creative ideas, build better relationships with clients and customers, and give their organization a significant competitive edge over their competition. And because of a lot of their competition are likely just maintaining the status quo or just following orders from the higher ups, or maybe they're out of touch and not listening to the diverse perspectives and needs of the market. Now, 83% of millennials are actively engaged when they believe the organization fosters an inclusive culture. In a world struggling to win the war for talent, being able to inspire and engage millennials is essential. Millennials can be a challenging demographic for some organizations to attract and retain, but something as dramatic as getting 80% engaged and productive getting them that productive can be an absolute game changer. But this is kind of the reality that we're in. Inclusive workplaces have massive benefits to companies. It's not about companies doing the right thing or just not being dismissive and intolerant. It's about greater team performance, higher cash flow, greater innovation, and higher levels of engagement. Now, as crucial as an inclusive workplace culture is, it's not nearly as common as it should be. 62% of young workers believe that their workplace does not do enough to create an inclusive workplace. A huge percentage of workers do not feel there's enough being done to create inclusion. So this is kind of where we are. Inclusion improves performance, increases profits and innovation, and is the key to creating engagement. Yet, a lot of employees do not feel that their workplaces do nearly enough to create an inclusive environment. In today's business climate, that plays a huge part in whether businesses are able to attract the talent they need or not, or why many workers are exploring their options in the labor market. People today want to find a workplace that will let them improve their performance, feel understood, be innovative, be engaged, and that aligns with their values. This is why we need to really understand the impact that DEI has on how and why we attract and retain talent. So to do that, we're going to take a little detour and talk about the psychology of marketing and how it impacts motivation and the choices that we make every day. Now, marketing psychology is a fairly new and very interesting application of the cognition of motivation and how we make choices. So here's what it tells us. No one likes to be sold to. People have an innate distrust in a sales pitch. Social proof. People make decisions based on the behavior of others. Loss aversion. People are more motivated to avoid a bad outcome than actually achieve a good outcome. And fear of missing out, or FOMO. People desiring something that may be in limited supply. Now, what this insight tells us is how to capture interest and affect how people choose. It gives us a fresh way to look at how we are attracted to opportunities. We dislike being sold to or being pushed towards something directly. We'd rather find something that is recommended or endorsed by someone that we trust. We want to make sure that whatever we choose will avoid a negative outcome. But we also don't want to miss out on something that's great. When there's something that we're looking for that's recommended by those we trust, and we are pulled towards it because it seems like it is less likely to have a negative outcome, and we feel like we haven't missed out. So an easy way to summarize all of this is we don't want to be pushed towards opportunities. We want opportunities that pull us in. Now, the psychology of marketing can give us some really helpful and practical insights into how to attract and recruit talent, which can be easily summarized by the differences between push and pull. This concept was originally developed in the marketing realm, but has been significantly adopted to talent acquisition, business attraction, economic development, workforce development, and more. So push is when a company markets their job or opportunity to the labor market, who may not be aware of nor are seeking it. This is the cold sell effort through various promotional activities. So push is the traditional way that we hire. We pay job ads or recruiters to reach the widest audience, promoting our opportunities to anybody who's going to listen. Then applicants make decisions to apply based on the details provided in the job ad or the sales pitch, and whatever homework they do on the company themselves. Success comes from pushing our opportunities onto our target audience. Now, pull is when applicants actively seek out opportunities with a particular organization due to its goodwill, culture, and reputation. Pull is a more intentional approach, marketing the company's qualities, benefits, reputation, and workplace culture, informing applicants of opportunities through referrals from existing staff or partner organizations, or even school alumni communications. It's more about the quality of viable applicants that fit the values and characteristics that you're looking for, rather than the quantity approach of casting a wide net and hoping for the best. Success comes from creating an environment that pulls your target audience to you. Basically, push is selling the hype and pull is selling the fit. Now, the traditional push strategy is a bit easier, but it doesn't necessarily create the best long-term results. According to an 18-month study by Leadership IQ, a depressingly low number of new hires are considered successful and a good fit. Another sign that the traditional push approach may not be as successful as it should be is a trouble that many organizations are still having with recruitment right now. Employees expect more, and the same old sales pitch isn't cutting it. There are many reports from businesses with strong, inclusive workplace cultures who use their company's reputation and word of mouth from employees as the core of their recruitment strategies. These companies do not seem to be experiencing nearly the same challenges with attracting talent as many of their peers. So, for example, Cisco Systems, a Fortune 100 networking and cloud cybersecurity company. Cisco's demand grew by 300% during and after the first lockdown, but they did not have the same struggles for talent as many of their competitors. Part of their success was leading with the company culture and encouraging their staff to be ambassadors and help out in their recruitment process. And this gave them a great advantage. Now, recruiting talent is one thing for a company that's expanding during COVID, but what about one that suffered? Well, hospitality chain Hilton was amongst the hardest hit in the early days of the pandemic. Now, Hilton, like most of the hospitality sector, was hit really hard. The company laid off about 75% of its workforce and corporate staff. However, in September 2021, Hilton's US hotels reached 85% occupancy, requiring them to rehire and recruit about 12,000 employees. This challenge was considerably more manageable for Hilton compared to many other large hotel chains because of the loyalty and trust they had built with their workforce and a reputation for being an inclusive and supportive employer. They use the mindset of always an ally when they think about their employees and their community. And this creates a pull for them that allows them to bounce back from the worst crisis in their company's history. Now, where you start with DEI has a lot to do with the goals you have for your organization, especially when it comes to talent recruitment and retention. Prioritizing diversity first will allow you to push your opportunities on the labor market and hoping to catch the eye of the diverse talent that you're looking for. But if employees are told that the organization is committed to attracting diverse talent and having representation, but once the person starts and they don't see the equity and inclusion that is needed for them to be successful, they're not likely to stay. And this is a real problem for many industries and sectors that make formal commitments to improving diversity. So, for example, in the legal sector, there's what's called the Mansfield Rule, which measures whether law firms have affirmatively considered at least 30% women, lawyers of color, LGBTQ lawyers, and lawyers with disabilities for leadership positions. And this is an excellent goal for the law firms to strive for, but getting diverse talent and keeping diverse talent are two completely separate things. So to quote Khalil Smith from the Neuro Leadership Institute, Diversity without inclusion is a revolving door of talent. Now, prioritizing inclusion first allows for the workplace culture and social proof to be what pulls the labor market to your door. When you have a workplace where people feel accepted for who they are and that they belong, you will create the loyalty that will keep them long term. When employees see that your organization aligns with their values, gives them a voice, is invested in their success, and creates a sense of belonging, they will bring their whole self to work, their ideas, their perspectives, their enthusiasm, and their productivity. Plus, they will tell others about the experience. And the thing about pull is that it creates what we call the ambassador effect, where employees act as brand ambassadors for your employer brand, telling others about how great you are to work for, sharing positive and authentic posts on social media, and encouraging others to apply to work for you. And often this happens unprompted. And the thing is that 88% of employers identify that employee referrals as superior to all other sources of providing quality new hires. The vast majority of businesses find that when employees are ambassadors for your business in the labor market, you get much higher quality of talent who are looking to work for you. And you get them much faster. Pull creates ambassadors that find better quality talent that are faster for you to hire. Applicants hired by employee referrals come in 55% faster than those sourced through career sites. The one thing that's also important to mention is what happens on the flip side. When someone is hired into a workplace that is not inclusive, where they are not experiencing a workplace culture that supports them, it ultimately will drive them away. Then the cause and effect that worked for you, works in your favor with pull, the ambassador effect, will work against you with push. Having a bad employer brand will drive people away from your business and will encourage others to not apply to work for you. A bad brand makes it much harder for the talent you're seeking to envision working for you. So let's take a look at what the effects are for hiring for diversity without creating an inclusive workplace culture. So this is an example that comes from a colleague of ours who shared his story with us and gave us permission to use it. The names and specifics have been changed. So everybody, meet Mac. Mac is an addictions counselor who's going through gender transition. The organization that he works for is a major advocate for diversity and inclusion and went out of their way to show support for the LGBTQ community. And this was one of the main factors that really excited Mac to take the job with them. However, it didn't take Mac long to realize that the organization's official stance and support for diversity and inclusion really wasn't part of their culture. Mac didn't deal with any overt harassment from his coworkers, but he did deal with a lot of undignified behavior and microaggressions. He really felt like the culture of the workplace acknowledged him, but didn't actually accept him. One of the most common issues that Mac had to deal with was when people would make the effort, would not make the effort to respect his name and would still consistently use his dead name, often citing that it was too hard to remember to call him Mac. People would often refer to him and the female coworkers on his team as the girls when addressing them as a collective. Now, Mac was quite patient with people, but was very tired of having to constantly correct people and advocate for himself. When he would bring it up to management, they would often shrug it off and say that the staff who were making him feel uncomfortable or who consistently needed to be corrected didn't mean anything by it, that they were just slow to change, so he shouldn't worry about it. The other thing that was really starting to get to Mac was that he was only ever asked for input or feedback on LGBTQ issues with clients. He felt like he was expected to be the spokesperson for this massive diverse community, which was really unfair. He was expected to take on a lot of extra work, to sit on committees or represent the organization at every diversity or LGBTQ function. He also felt that his thoughts and feedback beyond the LGBTQ community were often dismissed or ignored. Eventually, Matt quit, and he was quick to warn anyone that the organization did definitely talk the talk, but they certainly did not walk the walk. Now, what Mac faced is a similar situation that many from minority populations or diverse communities have to deal with. When they're hired for their diverse background, it can place them in a really challenging situation. Now, representation is super important. It absolutely matters. But when diversity is prioritized without inclusion, it can create alternate forms of discrimination. It can make people feel like their only value to their employer is their representation, where they are seen as a spokesperson or a token for their culture or their race or their circumstance. Their value as a person or as an employee is not nearly as important to the company as the representation. And when their presence's primary goal is to check a box or make the company look good, or they're only included on issues that invoke the diverse community, or sorry, that invoke the diverse community that they are expected to represent, then what you have is tokenism. And when that person is also expected to put in more work as a representative, to sit on committees, lead diversity initiatives, constantly educate their coworkers, and champion change on top of everything else they have to do as part of their regular job, then this is what experts refer to as the minority tax. Now, if you want to learn more about tokenism and the minority tax, James will share a link to a short article that we have on our knowledge suite on the topic. Now, again, I want to restate that diversity and representation are vital. Time and resources absolutely need to be dedicated to the awareness, anti-bias training, setting goals for representational and unbiased recruitment, and the stories of firsthand discrimination and the challenges that people have had to endure need to be shared in order to make the significant change that is needed. But placing those steps at the beginning may not create the transformation that we are seeking. We can't just paint over the culture of our workplace and hope the new coat of paint will take. We need to tear down that 70s wallpaper. We need to sand down the rough spots, fix the holes, and in some cases, remove everything right to the wall studs if we want to create lasting change. DEI is not a new coat of paint. It's a total remodel. So now that we've seen what can happen in a diversity first approach, let's take a look at what can happen in an inclusion first approach. So here's another example from a colleague of ours, again, with the names and specifics have been changed. So meet Clara. So Clara was recently hired as an account manager for a national software company. Her job was practically all remote, and she was supporting her clients and meeting with her team. When Clara was first hired, she wanted to make a good impression. So her main priority was to just fit in. One of the big things that Clara was concerned about was the fact that she suffered from a sleep disorder that would often make her unable to function in the morning. Now, this caused her a lot of issues in her career and even caused her to lose more than one job in her past. But eventually, the sense of belonging that she felt with her organization allowed her to tell her boss. Now, Clara's boss was very compassionate when Clara told him. He informed her that she didn't have to suffer with the crazy routine and poor sleeping patterns that she had been currently managing to be on time for her morning meetings. The company would find a way to support Clara in her efforts to manage her sleep schedule so she didn't push herself to burnout like she had in the past. Now, fortunately for Clara, there was a rather simple solution. She had been working with a team and clients remotely in the Eastern time zone, so her boss was able to transfer her to a team in the Pacific time zone, still working remotely from home. So now the 8:30 team meeting that she was struggling to function for was at her 11:30 a.m. This simple accommodation made a world of difference for Clara. She was able to manage her sleep schedule so much easier and dealt with so much less stress than she ever had before. Clara had become a major asset with the company, and her productivity had never been so high. Even though her manager didn't think that the accommodation was a big deal, it was to Clara. She's now a big cheerleader or ambassador, you could say, for the company, and will talk up their amazing and supportive culture at every opportunity. Now, Clara's situation was a rather simple fix, but the solution isn't what's important here. It was the belonging that she felt that allowed her to speak up and share what she needed. Now, a creative boss and a supportive team can make amazing things happen, but employees need to feel like the company sees them as a person and accepts that they might need some more or some different help to be successful, to be as successful as other people, and that it's okay to be different and to need different things. When employees feel like they are accepted and that they belong, then it allows them to feel like they can be vulnerable in a safe way. They can allow them to speak up and to know that their needs and their situation will not be ignored. What we all want is a workplace where we can be, we all want is a workplace where we can be ourselves, where we can feel included, encouraged, and trusted. We all want a culture where we are inspired to share all of our ideas, our opinions, and everyone's perspectives and contributions are respected. Putting inclusion as the first priority lets employees, even existing employees, with any different needs, it allows them to speak up and let the company know what they need in order to belong. Diversity goals are absolutely vital, but they need to be implemented within a workplace that is already committed to becoming truly inclusive. And this is why we need to prioritize inclusion as the natural place to start. Now, committing to creating a more inclusive workplace will allow you to build a workplace culture that would benefit your current employees and that will appeal to future employees. So to create a workplace that prioritizes inclusion, you need to understand where to start. And that begins with understanding how a workplace culture is built. Now, this is how a workplace culture is built. If any of you have been part of some of our past training, this will look familiar to you. So many of you also might find that it looks familiar because this is built on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the dominant theory defining people's motivations. Now, this hierarchy, the workplace culture hierarchy, works as the same way as Maslow's and defines how a workplace can influence employee motivation by providing people what they need. Now, a quick summary of this hierarchy is that the workplace needs to start at the bottom to ensure a strong foundation of compliance. Now, this does include legal compliance, but it's more than just that. It's really about addressing job dissatisfaction. And this is where equity needs to be implemented, ensuring that things like company policies, wellness programs, wages, and compensation are not just meeting the legal minimum, but are actually competitive within the sector, sufficient to meet employees' needs, and are fair and equitably accessible. And this is also where our anti-discrimination, anti-racist policies are created and enforced in order to give teeth to complaints and to ensure that staff feel physically safe at work. Now, from there, we move beyond compliance to psychological safety. And this is where employees are able to feel heard, feel respected, and able to speak up and share their needs, ideas, and thoughts and opinions without fear of retaliation or ridicule. Now, from there, we move on to inclusion. And this is why inclusion is so important. Inclusion cannot be something that is only spoken about by HR and DEI professionals. Inclusion is a core foundation to a successful, productive, and profitable workplace culture. It's about making sure that all people, everyone, feels like they belong and are accepted for who they are, that everyone is encouraged to be as successful as they possibly can be. Now, from inclusion, we move up to engagement. Once employees have had their job dissatisfaction removed, once they feel safe and comfortable to be themselves, and they feel encouraged and that they belong, then and only then can they be fully engaged in order to do their work. able to have sustained sense of motivation and bring enthusiasm and pride to their work. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the workplace culture hierarchy, we have some articles and videos that we can share with you. James will probably put one or two in the chats function, so check those out. But let's take a second to go back and take a little closer look at the bottom two stages that are required in order to build inclusion. So, compliance. This is where we incorporate equity. Part of compliance is making sure that the factors of the workplace are competitive, sufficient, and equitable. Compliance is the required foundation. It's about removing job dissatisfaction and the parts of the workplace that demotivate employees. It's critical that employees see that their workplace cares enough about them to provide the factors and conditions that are beyond the basic legal minimums. They need to know that their workplace will treat them equitably and provide them what they need in order to give them their best work. Now, fully eliminating job dissatisfaction requires some psychological safety. To improve the factors of the workplace that are causing dissatisfaction and demotivation, you need to let employees feel safe enough to share how they feel the workplace treats them and to let you know what they need. Building psychological safety is the natural place to implement the more traditional diversity training. When people feel safe and are willing to be vulnerable, knowing that they're going to be respected, then you can start to see success with programs like unconscious bias training and cultural awareness courses. Now, these are really important parts of creating DEI in your workplace, but their success is limited without psychological safety. Now, in the past examples, psychological safety was something that Mac was really lacking. He felt that his needs were going unheard and was afraid that if he kept bringing up the lack of respect that he felt, it would brand him a whiner and would damage the reputation and relationships that he had had within the organization. With the Clara example, it was because of psychological safety that she felt safe to tell her boss that she was struggling. She didn't feel like she needed to hide her challenges like she had in her past jobs. And because of that, she was able to start to advocate for herself and reach her full potential. Now, there's an undeniable tie between psychological safety and successful talent attraction and retention. Keeping top talent has a lot to do with actually listening to them. If you hire someone for their skills, their abilities, and their professional judgment, then you put them in a workplace where they don't feel safe to speak up and share their experiences or their perspectives or their talent with you, why would they stay? The ability to speak up and to be encouraged to share thoughts and ideas can be the biggest factor in creating the ambassador effect with employees. Skilled and talented people often associate with other skilled and talented people. You want your existing staff to share with their professional network that your workplace goes beyond compliance, makes people feel safe to share their perspective, and lets everyone feel like they belong. The best use of your organization's time and resources that will also get you the best ROI, by the way, is to transform your organizational culture to one that prioritizes the path to inclusion and engagement. Then you will not need to push people as hard to apply to work with you. You will create the kind of magnetic pull that draws the talent to seek you out and lets them bring the very best version of themselves to work every day. Now, addressing compliance and psychological safety is not a quick or easy process. I would love to say there's just this one quick, simple thing you have to do that will universally answer all your questions and be a clear solution for every issue. But the truth is, it's not that simple. Dissatisfaction, the lack of psychological safety, and employees not feeling like they belong are complex problems. And the specific causes and solutions are unique to each organization that is dealing with them. So you may just need a little bit of help to get started. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective. Maybe you need to know what you yourself have the power to address and change. Other times it's about finding what strategies are going to have the highest impact with the least amount of effort. But if you're looking for some help or guidance to bring the change to your workplace, then the best thing that you can do is to book a free follow-up chat with us. So if you're responsible or involved in leading DEI initiatives, we can help by providing a clear plan on how to get the most out of your current efforts by leveraging inclusion to meet your objectives. And this can all happen within your level of authority. If you're an HR manager or looking to attract and retain the best talent, we can provide you with a blueprint for creating a workplace culture that pulls talent to you and creates change within your scope of responsibility. If you're an owner or executive, if you want to create an environment that improves performance, increases profits and innovation, and boosts employee motivation and engagement, then this chat is exactly what you need. Now, our chat with you is just a conversation to find out your specific needs so we can provide you with the best advice to get started. And we're so confident in our expertise and that our strategies can really lead to the change you're looking for. If eventually you do end up working with us, we offer a satisfaction guarantee. So that's pretty much it. So to make sure you don't miss out on anything, James is going to share with you a link to book your free consultation in both Zoom and on YouTube. So that's pretty much all for me. So I want to thank you all, and I hope that you found something in this talk that can help you make a difference today.